Hello Internet, I am back with another rant that is tangentially related to film and entertainment. Today we will be talking about screenplays. So we probably all have a basic understanding of what a screenplay is. After all, they serve as the foundations for most of our favorite TV shows and movies. So I want to make this video as a sort of introduction to the form and technique of screenwriting. Hopefully this might inspire some of you to try your hand at it. So I want to start first with a disclaimer about my qualifications. I am not a professional screenwriter at all by any stretch of the imagination. I do write screenplays as a hobby, and my job involves a lot of analyses of studio screenplays for both TV pilots and films. So that's kind of where my professional qualifications begin and end. So all of my advice and guidance here should absolutely not be taken as gospel. I'm simply making this video because I really enjoy the nuances of screenplays and screenwriting, and I wanted to share that enthusiasm with the rest of the internet. So let's start with the biggest difference between screenplays and standard prose. Screenplays visually look really different. Sure, both types of stories have beginnings, exposition, middles, rising action and climax, and ends, falling action, but they have majorly different visible cues. Let's break down the building blocks of a script. Slug lines, used whenever the location of a narrative changes. Typically formatted as interior or exterior, and then you give the name of your location, and then you specify what time of day the scene is taking place at. Slug lines are crucial to a production team's sanity, since a huge determining factor in budgeting or greenlighting a film is figuring out how many location changes may be taking place throughout the story. Therefore, it's important that a script highlights all of its different locations accordingly with slug lines. Next up is dialogue. Dialogue should always be formatted in the center of the page, with the character's name in all caps, so that it'll be easy for an actor to spot their line when skimming the story. I know that dialogue tags are a pretty big part of most types of prose for the sake of thoroughly conveying how a character's words are making them feel and stuff, but in screenwriting, such emotions, fear, sadness, anger, etc., are expected to be more implicit so that the actor has more freedom to interpret the story's words. Instead, you want to save dialogue parentheticals for indicators about where a character is in a scene, or whether the character is delivering their lines through some sort of phone, a walkie-talkie, a can on a string, or what have you. I'm not saying that parentheticals can never be used in a similar way to dialogue tags, but I just recommend that they be used that way sparingly. The parenthetical in this example here is the most common one you'll ever see, OC, which indicates that this character's lines are being delivered off camera. They're either in another room, speaking through a phone, or being used as a voiceover. Sometimes voiceovers even get their own parentheticals, VO. Straightforward enough, right? Now for action lines. Believe it or not, action lines detail the actions taking place within the film. Though its definition is pretty straightforward, action lines are hands down the most difficult component of a script to write. In a perfect world, you'd like for your script to be about 40% action description and 60% dialogue. That's because dialogue-heavy stories are typical indicators of a really compelling narrative. Of course, this standard is very much subject to change depending on what type of story you're telling. But let's just assume we're talking about a run-of-the-mill sitcom or blockbuster. Long story short, you want your action lines to be short and snappy. No fluff, just straight to the point. For example, if you have a character answering a door, simply write in your action line, Bob answers the door. You want to avoid flowery prose like Bob starts at the sound of the doorbell. A bead of sweat rolls down his paling cheek as he creeps toward the door. Sure, the imagery in that second sentence is a lot more captivating, but your responsibility as a screenwriter isn't so much to deliver an emotional story as it is to construct the foundation of a story that talented actors and filmmakers can flush emotion into through their own areas of artistic expertise. So that's your formatting basics. I'm sure that my explanations have raised a bit of a concern along the lines of, If it's not a screenwriter's job to add emotions to the script, then whose job is it? And honestly, it's a tricky question because as a screenwriter, you still want to engage your audience or prospective buyers, but you also don't want to come across as stepping on actors and filmmakers' toes. So our concern becomes something like, how can you leave a story open to some levels of interpretation while still establishing a rich, cohesive world of settings and characters? I want to emphasize that it is your job as a screenwriter to establish the emotional tones of a story as a whole, whether that be through the story's language, subject matter, etc. But you just need to do that while avoiding constant descriptions about how exactly your characters may be feeling or acting at any given moment. That's the kind of stuff that you should leave to actors and directors to decide. Overall, it's a super difficult balance to strike that very few people can ever entirely achieve. And I feel like I've left you all with a dissatisfying answer to this dilemma as a result. So I'm gonna try to dig up some of my old notes from college and see if I can offer some examples that may better illustrate my point. Let's use this script for Fatal Attraction. Here are the first few lines. All action, no dialogue. This is perfectly acceptable, and even enhanced by the way that the writer is using slug lines to break up these chunks of information. An interesting thing that the writer did here is include instructions on how he liked scene transitions to look. These are the types of details that you only include when you think they're integral to the tone or aesthetic of a story. Otherwise, editorial decisions like this are usually up to the director and the post-production team. There are also some other technical details here worth mentioning. There's cut to. This is inserted between major scene changes. Notice how the characters' names are capitalized. A character's name should always be capitalized whenever you're introducing them for the first time into the story. Also notice how the writer made the choice to count the slug lines in the script. This numbering is usually done so that producers can get a better idea of precisely how many location changes occur throughout a film. Okay, so now that we've gone over the basics of both formatting and screenplay storytelling, we need to talk a bit about how you would actually go about writing the darn story. I personally use the screenwriting presets on Scrivener, but before I had graduated to that, I bounced between Word, Pages, and Google Docs. At the end of the day, you can write screenplays on any word processing software as long as you have access to screenwriting presets. If those aren't pre-downloaded onto whatever application you use, there are usually free presets that you can download from the interwebs. I will link some places to find presets in the description box down below. It's also worth noting that the industry standard for screenplays is Final Draft. But honestly, the platform you choose should just come down to a matter of convenience at the end of the day. And with that, that's all I really have to say about introducing you to the world of screenwriting for now. Stay tuned, I might make a second video that dives a bit more into the nitty-gritty of covering scripts and selling scripts. So if that is something that might be intriguing to you, be sure to like this video and subscribe, and hopefully part 2 will be coming out soon. Bye for now.